After my father's tragic death in a car accident, our family's financial stability crumbled. My brother, just 16 then, had to forego college to support us as my mother had never worked before. Despite these struggles, we managed as a close-knit family, facing hardships head-on. Years later, when my brother was diagnosed with osteosarcoma, his ability to work in physically demanding jobs diminished. With our mother's modest income as a legal receptionist and no health insurance from my brother's job, the medical bills began to pile up. Since I was 12, I had been working part-time and saving for college, but seeing the family's distress, I redirected my funds to help with his medical expenses. Despite our financial struggles, my mother and brother were too proud to seek assistance from charities or even launch a GoFundMe, insisting on maintaining their dignity. As the costs mounted, I emptied my savings, all while assuming they valued my sacrifices. However, 3 years into this ordeal, my brother decided his girlfriend, Ellie, should move in for support. Ellie had been a steady presence since shortly before his diagnosis, proving her loyalty despite the challenging circumstances. Unlike us, she had grown up an orphan, her life marked by financial and personal struggles, much like our own. Surprisingly, despite my financial contributions and support, my family asked me to leave our home to make room for Ellie. At 16, faced with their decision, I was forced to reevaluate my place in the family and the meaning of gratitude and support. My sacrifice for my brother's health, made willingly and out of love, seemed overshadowed by their sudden decision, leaving me to ponder the complex dynamics of familial obligations and personal boundaries. I had spent the last few years sacrificing my dreams of college to support my family financially, especially my brother, who was diagnosed with osteosarcoma. Our financial situation was already stretched thin, but when Ellie, my brother's girlfriend, came into the picture, the dynamic shifted even more. Ellie had her own share of struggles, having grown up an orphan and constantly battling with her aunt. When she had nowhere else to go following a fierce argument with her aunt, my brother decided she should move in with us for support. Despite my own contributions to the household, including forfeiting my college savings to cover medical bills and living expenses, my mum supported this decision. She saw it as an act of love. Ellie had chosen to stick by my brother through his illness, and in her view, this warranted any sacrifice on our part. It seemed my brother felt the same, often helping Ellie financially, despite our own dire situation. I couldn't help but feel sidelined, as if my sacrifices were less visible or meaningful. Then, just as I turned 16, the blow came. My mother told me I needed to find my own place, because our home was too small with Ellie moving in. This felt like a betrayal after everything I had poured into the family. Hurt and confused, I initially refused to leave. However, the conversation with my mother was adamant, justifying the decision by saying we didn't know how much longer my brother had and he needed Ellie's emotional support. When I confronted my brother, hoping to hear it was all a misunderstanding, he acknowledged my sacrifices but still asked me to move out. He expressed his gratitude but explained his desire to spend whatever time he had left with Ellie by his side. This left me feeling like an outsider in my own family, discarded after years of dedication. Feeling unvalued and betrayed, I decided to leave. I moved into a modest apartment in a less desirable neighbourhood with 3 roommates. Although the conditions were far from ideal, I was grateful for the roof over my head and the new friendships I was forming. My roommates, both of whom came from challenging backgrounds, quickly became my new support system. We bonded over our shared struggles, and they showed me kindness and understanding that I felt was lacking from my own family. It's been 4 months since I cut ties and moved out, and the silence from my family weighs heavily on me. Despite the hurt, I miss them deeply, as they were a significant part of my life before everything unravelled. I hold on to the memories of better times, wondering if there might ever be a path back to reconciliation. But for now, I focus on building my life independently, finding strength in the resilience that got me through the toughest of times. Intrusive. Even though Ellie had been part of our household and had lived with us at no cost, Her sudden departure and the reasons behind it had left us all astounded. Given everything I had sacrificed for my brother's well-being, it was deeply disappointing that he hadn't reached out to me sooner. I had always held out hope that they would contact me, yet the silence persisted. When they finally did reach out, it wasn't to mend fences but to seek more favours. My mother's call, which I had answered hoping for an apology, only brought news of Ellie's abrupt breakup with my brother via a text message the night before. She explained that she couldn't bear the thought of my brother's inevitable passing and decided to preemptively sever ties to lessen her future pain. This revelation came after she had spent months living with us without contributing financially, cleverly saving up to finance her departure. Ellie had exploited my brother's situation to her advantage, calculating her moves with an eye towards self-preservation, which stung all the more given our family's own precarious financial and emotional state. My reaction to my mother's plea for help in tracking Ellie down was a mixture of laughter and resignation. I told her this was just karma reflecting back on how they had treated me. I then ended the call abruptly and decided to block them, feeling justified in distancing myself from those who had repeatedly overlooked my sacrifices. Discussing the incident with my roommates, they were supportive but also prompted me to reflect on whether I wanted this estrangement to be the final chapter in my relationship with my family. Despite their actions, they highlighted the harsh reality of my brother's illness and urged me to consider my future feelings of regret. They respected my stance and offered a different perspective without pressing me towards any specific action. As I recount this turmoil, I'm left pondering over the complexity of my feelings and the unresolved issues stemming from my family's secretive past. Our parents had eloped against family wishes, shrouded their history in mystery, and left us disconnected from our relatives. This backdrop of secrecy and estrangement only complicates my feelings about reaching out or reconciling. Now, I'm turning to this platform for guidance. After reflecting on my roommate's advice and my own conflicted emotions, I'm still uncertain about the best path forward. Do I hold on to my justified resentment, or do I try to bridge the gap, knowing my brother's time may be limited? I would appreciate any insights or experiences that might help me navigate this fraught family dynamic, ignored and took advantage of my efforts without a second thought. I think it's important to address why I'm maintaining this distance from them. I've made it clear that without a genuine apology from their side, our communication remains halted. While I've only blocked their phone numbers, they still have avenues to reach out to me on social media if they truly intend to make amends. During a heart-to-heart with my roommates, I opened up about my stance. They already knew my backstory, but discussing it afresh helped clarify my feelings. One roommate shared her own tough decision of leaving her family to pursue her literary dreams against her father's wishes. Her father's unexpected death left her regretting their unresolved issues, highlighting the pain of such permanent separations. Her story added a poignant layer to our discussion, but didn't sway my resolve. It underscored the complexity of family dynamics and personal choices. She hasn't spoken to most of her family since the funeral, save for occasional conversations with her mother, which remained strained. This sharing session wasn't about judging each other's choices, but understanding them. Both my roommates supported my decision, and we appreciated each other's perspectives without any conflict. Interestingly, our neighbour Sophia, who has known us since childhood, decided to intervene, which was unexpected. She reached out expressing concern about my apparent indifference towards my family's distress, particularly my brother's breakup with Ellie. She even mentioned my father, suggesting he would have been disappointed in my current stance. While I respect Sophia, her involvement was unsolicited, and she isn't fully aware of the extent of my family's disregard for my sacrifices. It's tricky when outsiders try to influence such personal matters, especially based on partial insights. It's not just about Ellie's departure or my brother's heartache. It's about a pattern of neglect and disrespect from my family that Sophia might not fully grasp. As of now, my decision stands firm. I await a genuine outreach from my family. If they wish to reconcile, the ball is in their court to acknowledge their mistakes and apologise. Meanwhile, I remain committed to my boundaries, ensuring they respect my need for a sincere apology before any dialogue can resume. This is how I choose to navigate this challenging family dynamic, staying true to my needs while leaving a door open for possible reconciliation, should they choose to step through it with honesty and remorse. On him, like this. They attempted to justify their lack of communication and the way they ignored my explicit wishes regarding my address. To them, reaching out was an act of love, but for me, it felt like a violation of my boundaries and privacy. The meeting, although intended as a step towards reconciliation by them, only highlighted our fundamental differences in perspective and respect for one another's wishes. 5 weeks ago, Sophia, who has been a family friend for years, expressed to me how disappointed she was with my distancing from my family over the situation with Ellie, a person they had chosen over me despite barely knowing her. While Sophia's intentions might have been good, her involvement was unwanted. My response was simple. Thank you, but no, thank you. I owe my family nothing at this point, not after everything that had transpired. When my family unexpectedly showed up at my doorstep after one of my friends disregarded my instructions and disclosed my location, it was the last straw. Despite my initial refusal to engage, I eventually allowed them inside, not out of forgiveness, but to address the issue head-on and prevent any further disruptions to my life. My roommates were home and gave their consent to let them in, so I figured we might as well clear the air. During the conversation, it became apparent that they weren't there to apologise or to acknowledge their previous mistakes. Instead, they focused on their own feelings, their struggles, and how they missed having me at home. They even had the audacity to comment on the safety of my neighbourhood, despite having never shown concern about my well-being before now. Their visit was not about making amends, but about seeking comfort for themselves. I communicated clearly and without ambiguity. I didn't want them in my life anymore. They had multiple opportunities to apologise and make things right, yet they chose to ignore them all, prioritising their own emotions over mine. Their visit confirmed that they were still the same self-centred individuals I remembered, and I was done allowing their selfishness to impact my life. As the conversation heated up, they seemed taken aback when I stood firm on my decision to distance myself. They argued that my brother was just trying to help, oblivious to how their actions had backfired. It was evident they didn't see anything wrong with their behaviour and weren't prepared to take responsibility for their role in our estrangement. By the end of the meeting, it was clear that our paths were diverging. I needed to focus on my future, much like Ellie had decided for herself. They left, perhaps with a better understanding of my stance, though it seemed they still couldn't grasp why I needed this separation. For me, it was about respecting my boundaries and moving forward, free from the drama and pain they brought into my life. As the conversation with my family intensified, I found myself losing patience. They continued to defend their actions, but to me, there was no justification that could make their behaviour acceptable. My responses grew sharp, reflecting my disbelief and frustration. Finally, recognising the futility of their efforts, they conceded. If I truly wished to sever our ties, they would respect my decision. They had hoped to bridge the gap between us, but it was clear that understanding and reconciliation were beyond reach. As they left, there was a palpable sense of finality to our relationship. My roommates, having witnessed the exchange, were taken aback by the dynamics of my family relationship and offered me their apologies for the uncomfortable situation. With that chapter seemingly closed, my focus shifted entirely towards building my future, one that didn't include the family who hadn't supported me when I needed them most. It's been nearly 3 years since I moved out, and life has been progressing positively. I started working at a local restaurant, and just recently I landed a job as a salesperson at a furniture company. This new role is a significant step up, promising better earnings, which is exciting. My roommate and I are even considering moving into a larger apartment soon, thanks to our combined savings. Despite the lack of contact with my family since our last fraught encounter, I'm informed indirectly about my brother through Sophia, our mutual connection. I hear he's doing okay, and while part of me still cares about his well-being, maintaining distance has allowed me to find peace and focus on my personal growth. Looking ahead, I'm open to the possibility of reconciliation, but only if my family comes to recognize and respect my perspective. Until then, I am content with the independence and new beginnings I've carved out for myself. For now, I am enjoying the stability and satisfaction of my new life, surrounded by friends and opportunities that affirm my choices.